Now we come to what we call as understanding ambivalent sexism. Now, ambivalent, we have different meanings of sexism in a way, different tropes, the way how it is getting represented. It also accepts in its category benevolent sexism. So, it means different varieties of sexism in a way. Sexism is a socio-cultural psychological construct, and we see that with it, it encompasses people's attitude, beliefs, and actions, as well as institutional and cultural practices. That either promote or reflect gender-based discrimination against women and men. So, these gender-based discrimination is not just about a single gender. Though again, the problematic part is that for a large uh, landscape like soaps, TV series, we still do not see much of queer representation. It is more of women and men only. And even then, we see discrimination towards both. So, let's say, for example, John Abraham. John Abraham has been seen as a sensual or sex symbol as compared to other females, and in most of his shows, films, he is shown to be shirtless. So sexualizing the body of that particular actor again is not only discrimination against what we call gender based against women, but there is also gender based discrimination, sexism around male, and it is unique, characterized by profound ambivalence. So, lot of different things regarding women and define it. So, Hidalgo and Royce define it as a set of biases and discriminatory practices that position one sex or gender as inferior. Now, when they are talking about ambivalent sexism, we also often see that one gender is hailed and the other gender is always pushed down. So, the inferiority of a certain gender also comes under the radar of ambivalent sexism. Understanding ambivalent sexism leads us to the consistency of both hostile and benevolent elements. Now, what are these hostile and benevolent elements? How are we going to understand it? So, if we locate Gopi, who is always dehumanized because she is a female, using dialogues like uh, which are related to she being a woman and not knowing certain things, is hostile sexism. And benevolent sexism is you cannot do this, let me do this for you. In a way, you are telling that individual or the female that you don't know, you cannot learn maybe, so let me do it for you. That is benevolent sexism. Has raised concerns in studies of media representation. According to ambivalent sexism theory, so now we are going to discuss a little bit on ambivalent sexism theory, and it says power imbalances and close dependency between the sexes coexist across all cultures, producing both hostile and benevolent philosophies. So, it is talking about close dependency between the sexes and how it coexists across all cultures. So, it is not just the Indian culture and the programs that we watch in India, but it is across cultures, producing both kind of either hostile or benevolent sexism or philosophies. Now, when you show that women is dependent on the male, you cannot do it, let me do it for you, you don't know how to do it, let me do it for you. Two very similar kind of representations from two parts of the globe. We have Anupama, who is repeatedly being told by the son and the father that you don't know anything. And then there is Legally Blonde, where people think that she's just a doll. She doesn't know anything. She makes it to the Harvard Law School, and the boy thinks that because of her, she has come there. which is also in a way true. She wanted to be close to him, so she made it. But no one is looking at the effort she made to get into Harvard Law School. They are only seeing her as someone who is chasing the love of her life. Benevolent sexism recruits women as unwitting participants. Example is Legally Blonde and also Anupama in their own subjection, offering provision and security in exchange for acquiescence, ultimately eliminating overt coercion. So, what is interesting to note here is that even in when the woman is trying to depend on a man, the way it has been represented that she is unwitty, okay, and on the contrary, she is also offering provision and security. The man is providing some sort of provision and security for exchange. And while hostile sexism asserts negative biases overtly, benevolent sexism appears positive. So, hostility is very outrightly looking like rude but and negative, but on the contrary, benevolent sexism doesn't look like it is rude. You are telling someone that they don't know, so let them help. So, it comes in a way wrapped in uh, sarcasm, but that goes undetected. And Lord's chivalry, because there is a man who will come in support and who will be willing to be there with protective parentalism, and that chivalry will be lauded, often presenting women as weak and incompetent and men as strong and superior. So, when we talk about feminism, we talk about when we talk about equality, we are talking about the cerebral opportunity, equal opportunity. We are not talking about the physicality of it, the physical power. But often people do not understand, and they tag feminism to be something very obscene, obnoxious. This form of sexism is abundant in media content. Feminists have been questioning its prevalence, but of course it has not been addressed fully. Studies that have examined the representation of women in advertisements and entertainment content, including their portrayal as decorative objects. So, most often women are just seen as decorative objects. They have no objectives of their own, and they are treated as a furniture or a piece of furniture, mostly, if not like treated as a trophy wife. Subtle sexism, often seen as normal, covered up by tradition, has replaced overt sexism. Shivai in Ishqbaz being very overprotective and controlling. So, this subtle sexism, which used to exist at some point, has been taken over by overt sexism. So, he's always very assertive to tell, which makes it even more sexist in nature. Benevolent sexism, which reinforces gender stereotypical beliefs, has been shown to have worse effects on women. So, hostile sexism comes with some sort of rude behavior where people think that it is not a good thing, but benevolent sexism is sugar coated, and therefore it goes undetected, and people do not know whether they underwent something called benevolent sexism or not. So, that is even more damaging. Protective paternalism propagated by media of men as paternalistic rescuers of women. This idea where damsel in distress is there and she needs a prince to go and rescue and protect. It's not just that men want to do it, it has been also told to them by society, by generations, that they are the ones who need to protect the women. They are the ones who are the rescuers, and in doing that, they over exercise this, what we call as paternalistic rescuer or protective paternalism. The over exercise of these devices of what they call is the problem. Men should also be told that in certain circumstances where where women ask for rescue or being protected, it should be done. It should not be overdone. And again, benevolent sexism reinforces female gender stereotyping of women as delicate, needing masculine dominance, ultimately limiting women's role by encouraging caregiver responsibilities. So, again, when we talk about female gender stereotyping, mother or caring nature like a nurse, is again coming back in question, and they are only caregivers. Their responsibility, their job is only to become a caregiver, and punishing them for assuming non-gendered specific roles. So it's not just that they are praising them to be caregivers, but if they do not conform to these gender typical specific roles, they are also punished. Theoretical perspectives suggest that two forms of sexism have three subcomponents. One is power dynamics of the sexes, which is always with the male, gender differentiation, when always males are supported in the family as compared to the females, and sexuality. Sexuality is again hailed, male superiority. These three subcomponents have separate functions, with the hostile sexism, benevolent sexism, and again moving on to discuss this dominant paternalism advocates for male control over women. So, this dominant paternalism which is there under the realm of what we call as ambivalent sexism, they are asked to exercise this, whereas protective paternalism proposes that men should safeguard. So, you see the difference, where one is dominant and the other is protective, where you are told, okay, propose that you can do this, you can be a protective paternalist. This is more regressive. It's not that this is not regressive, but this is less regressive. Men should safeguard and provide women based on their greater authority, power and physical strength. Competitive gender differentiation, again hostile sexism, male confidence by promoting the belief that women are inferior to men. How you boost the confidence of men is by telling them that you are inferior, that women are inferior to you. So, this is again something related to hostile sexism, very rude in nature. And then we have complementary gender differentiation, on the other hand, emphasizing traditional gender roles for women, such as being a mother and a wife, and assuming that men depend on women to carry out their responsibilities. Now, complementary gender differentiation under benevolent sexism shows that women are the ones who require some sort of protection or rescue, and assumes that men depend on women to carry out their responsibilities. They cannot do things on their own. Heterosexual hostility views women as objects of sexual gratification for men. Heterosexual intimacy idealizes women's sexual purity. And benevolent sexism exhibits in various forms, including protective, paternal, complementary gender differentiation and heterosexual intimacy. So, understanding ambivalent sexism through complementary gender differentiation, through hostile sexism, through protective paternalism, through dominant paternalism, and bringing in the idea of heterosexual hostility, also views women as objects of sexual gratification for men. And they think that these women have the capability to manipulate. So they are giving you, offering you pleasure, and on the contrary, they will be able to manipulate you. That is heterosexual hostility. That is what one man tells the other. And then there is sexual intimacy in benevolent sexism, where we have women's sexual purity, and through other means, by showing love and care for the person and the family, that fulfillment of romantic intimacy takes place, which they constitute as heterosexual intimacy. Protective paternalism and gender policing, again two very important topics. Here we see how Sudhir and Jayaraj argue that romantic paternalism, with which paternalistic and overprotective notions reduces the agency of women to victim as adverse to gender equality. And with that, we also see some examples. Identified and modeled two sexist tropes. Through the what we were talking earlier about fairy tales, romantic paternalism, where the man will come to save you, the prince will come to save you, is that trope that they are discussing. And overprotective notions, okay, along with gender equality, adverse to gender equality. Now, when we are discussing about this romantic paternalism, where men are showing some sort of romantic feelings for the other, and the other thinks that, oh, this is great. Now, all these princes who wanted a prince in their life to save them, where actually they fall in love with each other. And then what happens is, damsel in distress. So there is a damsel who is always in distress, and a prince needs to save this damsel. A re-narrative of this was Damsel, a recent film which talked about a damsel who brings her out of the distress on her own. She doesn't need a male or a prince to help her out. So it is in a way deconstructing the protective paternalism and romantic paternalism at the same time. Wolf in knight's armor is another example, where commonly used in movies to glorify male characters and subjugate female characters, perpetuating sexism in films. So not just through these films, but the Hindi films that we mentioned are also in and around this romantic paternalism. Damsel in distress tropes portray women as helpless, and at the same time they are in need of a male survivor. So if we talk about Snow White is dead, and she needs a prince to wake her up. So in a way, this prince is a necrophile who goes and kisses a dead body, and in that process of kissing, the princess gets back to life, because the apple that is stuck on her throat, or the poison, is moved out of the body, is moving out of the body, and therefore she comes back to life, and the prince is hailed as saving the princess. So how the narratives have been changed, how it has been placed and situated in the culture is very important to note. And then we have Wolf in knight's armor, where tropes are male protagonist committing crimes such as abduction, physical violence, verbal abuse, objectification and sexual harassment as well against women, and still being celebrated and rewarded with the lead woman. So he is committing all sorts of crime. In a way, he is a thug, and still he gets the woman What is it trying to justify? Wolf in knight's armor. Uh, the title says that he's a wolf in the body of a knight. He might be very good fighter, but what he ultimately is doing is physical violence. He is verbally abusing, objectifying. There is sexual harassment also, but still in the end we see he gets the girl. Both tropes present women as victim, and protective paternalism as a form of benevolent sexism is shown in these two films. These may seek like a warranted viewpoint of an uninformed section, but it could have long-term dampening effect on gender equality, as the discriminatory objectives and confirmatory biases associated with women are difficult to do away with. Now, someone who is watching as a kid or maybe also as a teenager will conform to the protective paternalism and also gender policing, telling what women have to do or should do. Rampant benevolent sexism, calling it romance, naming it as is love or also protectiveness. They will also in a way become, confirming the biases that are placed in gender policing and protective paternalism. Conclusion to benevolent sexism, ambivalent sexism, and the kind of sexism that we discussed in soaps and soap operas is very obvious and out loud, clearly represented. But again, because of activism, because of social media, there is backlash to, or it is a kind of a monitoring that is happening to the rampant sexism that is happening in media. Benevolent sexism is also masquerading in the forms of gender policing in mainstream Indian movies. Reviewed Hindi movies to show how women are encouraged to conform to traditional gender norms using rewards and punishments for central female characters of the movies. So, if you are doing good, if you are conforming to the traditional society norms, you will be rewarded, but if you are non-conforming, you will be punished. And this is happening with the central characters, the central female characters with which the audience relates to. The female characters were found in to be rewarded when they followed perspective gender norms as chaste and submissive, docile, polite, husband worshipping, nurturing and family oriented, otherwise punished with intentional discrimination, isolation, verbal intimidation, social ridicule or sexual harassment. Next we have sexual intimidation and relationship violence. Now we discussed about benevolent sexism and also ambivalent sexism, how protective paternalism works, how the other tropes of paternal protectivism works. Now, benevolent or covert sexism has been abundant in plethora everywhere, and in one such, if we take an example, we have Man Ki Awaaz Pratigya, and it depicts a misogynistic hero, mere sex object she treats women as, and we also see he forces himself onto a woman despite her turning him down. So, these are the representations coming from the male leads of series or serials like Man Ki Awaaz Pratigya. Such misogynistic representation and normal abusive behavior is justifying toxic masculinity. That is what has been happening in and around these soaps and soap operas. We also see that contemporary media portrayals continue to romanticize and normalize these kind of sexual behaviors or tropes, which can be categorized as benevolent sexism, largely under ambivalent sexism. Now, this stalking and gender violence with romance is another very interesting thing to note. If not violence at the level of physical, it could be in a way that you are intimidating the partner, you are using certain cuss words and that can be again constituted as something to do with romance. A lot of intensity is generated with that kind of environment. Then we have stalking, which is portrayed as a heroic trait in all of the mainstream Bollywood films as well. We see this toxic trait of the hero, stalking being one of them, that to attract the female lead. And women being raped is seen as her name is now, you know, uh, in shame. So it is not the perpetrator who is put to shame, rather the victim is put to shame because she has been raped. These illustrations continue in the media, and it is continuing and is being called as media sexism. Observes that the decrement or waiver of punishment is offered to the rapist if he offers to marry the victim is an in an extra legal measure that continues to be entertained because the internalization and stigmatization is widespread. Now, a rape victim and the perpetrator, they are asked to negotiate, and the court also at times asks the victim to get married to the perpetrator, and if the perpetrator agrees to marry under certain legalized conditions, his what they call as tenure to serve in the jail will be either less or it will be eradicated altogether. So the stigmas that are attached to these rape or being sexually abused is very much rampant in the series and the dramas that we are watching. These films and television dramas also do not shy away from glamorizing the rapist and promoting the marriage of victim to their rapist. So in a way, they are promoting the rapist's behavior by asking him to get married to the girl, and then even after that he can do anything and everything, and no one in the society could stop him. Many popular heroes, we should better call them popular actors like Prem Chopra, Ranjit, Shakti Kapoor and Sunil Grover have repeatedly essayed such roles of rapists and eve teasers in cinema. Now they are termed as villains, but what about uh, people like Varun Dhawan, who have made films like Badrinath Ki Dulhania, where he is chasing the girl in the bus, in DTC metro, everywhere where he can locate in order to ask her to get married. He also finally chases her to other country. So what about people like them, how they are situated in the film? They are tagged to be the villains. What about the heroes? They are equally to be blamed. Trivializing rape by using uh, the vocabulary of being raped or balatkar in different connotations, and this again in very popular Bollywood movie we see in Three Idiots. So there is a speech by Chatur, and instead of chamatkar, that word has been replaced by balatkar, and repeatedly he is using the word balatkar, and everyone is laughing because he is unknown to the meaning of chamatkar or the difference between the meaning of chamatkar and balatkar, and he is rampantly using that word, and it is shown in a very humorous and hilarious way. No one in the audience has the audacity to go and stop because people take it to be very trivial in nature. They don't understand the misogyny attitude associated with it. Objectification and dehumanization of females have been again and again brought in. One that we addressed where people are, where women are illiterate like Gopi, and the family is kind of bringing her down every now and then, making fun of her, calling her idiot. But we have sexist film tropes in contemporary times where we see item numbers. Now, item numbers nowadays is not just limited to films, but we see that it has also found its way in series, soaps, etc. Explicit scenes that romanticize sexual abuse. So, if a man is sexually involved in an intimate scene with a woman, and the kind of behavior he exerts uh, uh, requires or is indeed he is applying, you know, some slaps, uh, it is seen to be something okay. It is seen to be exercising intimacy or sexual behavior and not seen as sexual abuse. While some other tropes may be interpreted as feminist, attempting to promote women's safety, they ultimately reinforce harmful gender stereotypes and undermine equality. So, if there are any tropes where it concerns women's safety, they ultimately reinforce and say it is harmful gender stereotype. Similar in the case of objectification of women, from sensuous framings and male gaze to female fridging and pawning. So, these are other concerns like female fridging and pawning which are associated with the male gaze. Propagating sexist intertextualities, traditional tropes such as the damsel in distress also finds a place in contemporary narratives. So, we see the propagating these sexist intertextualities in films that we just discussed, like damsel in distress. It is brought out very relevantly and placed in the contemporary times. Heterosexual intimacy, again we see, contributes to gender inequality, because heterosexual intimacy is only asked or desired from the woman. Male has no role in it. So, by promoting gender role structures that promise intimacy, security within heterosexual relationship, that is how it is promoting gender inequality. The role is only limited to one gender. There is no role for the other gender. Benevolent sexism includes the idealization of women, protecting protective paternalism, again coming back, desire for close relationship, all subjectively good views towards women in traditional roles. So, what benevolent sexism does is they have an idea of a woman. They think that this is the ideal woman, and parental, of course, protective parentalism is associated with it, and the desire for a close relationship where not much of sexualization is associated. The negative counterparts, dominant paternalisms, disparaging attitude, and heterosexual hostility are all included in hostile sexism. We discussed how dominant paternalism, just like in the character of what we call as Mr. Bhalla in one of the series, and then there is disparaging attitude. He has a lot of anger issues, and Ishita is the one who is every now and then becomes a victim of his loud behavior. And another stereotyping of Punjabi men is associated with this. Then we have both types of sexism, whether it's benevolent, hostile, ambivalent, aim to protect, uphold patriarchy and conventional gender norms. So, what they do, or what they are trying to do in through these serials, is they are trying to uphold this patriarchy and also the conventional gender norms, which says that women should stay at home. We can provide all the luxuries of the world, but still they should be the ones taking care of the family, taking care of the family values, etc. And men were the one should be the ones who are the decision makers. The theory highlights the theory of ambivalent sexism highlights male dominance and heterosexual interdependence as two enduring and essential elements of gender relation and continually promote hostile and benevolent beliefs. So, in a way, this theory is highlighting the dominance of male and heterosexual interdependence, males dependent on female and females dependent on male. But you see, what are males dependent on for female and what are females dependent on male? These are just two different levels, and that they cannot be called heterosexual interdependence as enduring and essential elements, and while they continue to promote hostile and benevolent sexism. Implicit sexism creates particular issues for women and falls short of equality. Explicit sexism objectifies women and reducing them to act on objects rather than autonomous participants and reject their human agency. Now, the other problem with implicit sexism is they tag women as something as slut or somewhat like that. Explicit sexism objectifies women. Implicit sexism creates particular issues for women. And when explicit sexism is objectifying women, it is reducing them to act on objects rather than autonomous participants and rejects their human agency. So, when this kind of explicit sexism takes place, we see that there is no autonomy and they get rejected and also subdued to no human agency of their own. Women's idealization and symbolic annihilation. In the male dominated Indian media industry, we see another form of benevolent sexism, and this is called female underrepresentation, stereotypical characterization, secondary roles as mere mothers or romantic interest. Now, when we are talking about women idealization and symbolic annihilation, in a way what they are doing is they are removing women in symbolic roles, okay, they are annihilating it, and what they are now bringing in women only as supporting characters and very stereotypical categorization. If you compare it with serials like Shanti, you will see a stark difference between the soaps and serials that we are currently discussing and the one that was aired in Doordarshan called Shanti. There was a lot of agency given to women, but here we see that they are underrepresented and they are now sidelined. Classic characterization of domesticated good women on screen as submissive. Now, these domesticated women are called good women and they are also shown to be submissive. But if you tag them to be as good women, it is okay with them. They do not feel that it is a problem until and unless they are situated under the category of what is called as good women. They are unambitious and also virtuous, chaste, prioritizing, God-fearing, etc. These women are often depicted as additional and dispensable characters. Mothers in movies, benevolent goddesses, they are represented as, and perpetuating unrealistic and harmful expectations of motherhood. So, it goes beyond caring or nurturing, it goes to an extent where mother might be dying while taking care of the child. So, the perpetuating unrealistic standards of portraying mother is also a different concern when we are discussing benevolent sexism. The TV shows and advertisements and video games, all three kind of bring in all these benevolent sexism, ambivalent sexism and hostile sexism all together. Unlike films, television dramas play high on moral grounds, melodrama and domestic narratives, where we see the reinforcement of patriarchal norms. So, unlike films which is made for 3 hours, so we do not see so much of time only dedicated to these high moral grounds and melodrama, domestication. But on the contrary, since these soaps run for years, they get a lot of time to situate in these series. Most television dramas revolve around young women from middle class families falling head over heels with love with affluent males who are rich, and they are trying to match up to the boys family. So all the popular TV series of the time that are currently running and that started around 2000, similar kind of tropes of a low middle class girl and a rich boy. From Hindi dramas like Saath Nibhana Sathiya and Gum Hai Kisi Ke Pyar mein, we see female protagonist has to cope up with hurdles and tasks assigned to her to prove her worth. So Gopi in Saath Nibhana Sathiya, we see that how she is so docile, also shy in to such an extent that she is unable to reciprocate to most of the sarcasm which is in and around her and her behavior. All of these correlate to benevolence towards men or maternalism. Maternalism has been defined as women taking care of domestic work and their men in compensation for their materials and protection. So, men is providing and women is taking care of the domestic or domesticity, and therefore it situates in two different domains. In addition to television dramas, print and audio visual perpetuate misogyny, often featuring female objectification and maternalism undertones. So, whenever in print or in audio visual we see advertisements of suppose crockery, it is always shown with women. So, you see how maternalism undertone is still there. Female objectification when they are talking about some fashion brands, the way they have been pictured. The misogyny in a way perpetuates. They will think that, oh, it's a modeling job, okay, let's bring in some good looking female. Oh, it's a crockery ad, let's bring someone who is more like a woman next door. Advertisement for male deodorants such as Axe and Wild, we see how controversial they get. They have been particularly detrimental to female representation. There is no job for the female to be featured in these advertisements, but in order to show them as objects of desire, they are placed. Prior studies of Disney animated programs have noted symbolic annihilation of female characters and power relations, while Vasco have further interpreted the misogyny and sexist representation in these cartoons. So, the ones that we discussed, how Cinderella is seeking for a prince, she does not have the autonomy or agency to go and fight for herself with her stepmother. Similarly, Snow White, who is captured in a forest with 7 dwarfs, is waiting for the prince to come and rescue her, and in that process she dies, and we see this prince to be a necrophile. Despite attempts to improve female representation, Indian cartoon shows such as Chhota Bheem, Motu Patlu and Mighty Raju still fall short of adequate representation of female characters and restoring to misogyny. So, again it brings us back to the thought that are female representations in supporting characters enough that are being represented in cartoons, because these are the children who will get instilled with every time it is Chhota Bheem who is protecting the village. It's never Chutki who is coming forward to protect. So, what is the reason? What is the diversity in context to the biasness or the context of what we call as misogyny being presented? Lastly, we see Stemmer and Berkeley conducting a study to expose sexist video games, where we see benevolent sexism finding its place and getting promoted and perpetuate sexist ideas. The study also found that objectification of men reduces their well-being, attractiveness and social esteem. So, when they are trying to objectify men, we see that they are being shown as not that well-being. They are though shown as attractive, but it reduces their mental or cerebral opportunities. Additionally, the objectification of women impacts men's support of sexist beliefs, leading to increased hostility towards women. Now, how the impact is formulated around in and around benevolent sexism and hostile sexism, it impacts men's support for women. The way men are presented, it will ultimately lead to that men will one day say that they do not wish to support women. Men generally exhibit higher levels of hostile sexism, protective paternalism, while complementary gender differentiation was not prevalent. So, the aspects that we discussed in and around ambivalent sexism, we see that hostile sexism can be said to be at the first place. Second could be protective paternalism. Complementary gender differentiation is not that relevant. So, we can just remove it in a way. Individual level of conservatism predicted hostile sexism, but not benevolent sexism. And prevalence of benevolent sexism also poses a threat to women's advancement in workplace. So, in a way, if women do not realize what is benevolent sexism, it is always going to be used as a advantage for the other sex.